that purpose that I'm looking for, that tribe I'm looking for, it's at Sharp. It's no longer fighting, right? We're fighting a new battle.
Yeah.
And that is making sure that every first responder has access to a coach, a Sharp coach, giving as many people as possible the opportunity to experience what Sharp provides, because it's really, really powerful and it's life-changing.
I hope everybody is having a great day today. My name is Max Bush. I am the host today for the Sharp Performance Podcast, The Hero's Journey. Very happy to have one of our own team members on today, Justin Crocker. He's our head of talent. He'll give us an explanation of what that is, but he's a 20-year veteran of the Army, retired as a lieutenant colonel, and is a incredible addition to our team in leadership and many other things. But we're going to get into Justin's background. Justin, thanks for making the trip out.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Where'd you fly out from?
I flew from Indianapolis. So I left the service about 3 years ago, and my wife is from Southern Indiana. So we had 2 young kids, so we decided we wanted to be closer to family. So we retired on the north side of Indy.
Okay, cool. How's the weather there when you guys left? Pretty good?
It was pretty good. Yeah. I mean, I always like coming out here, sunny San Diego. But yeah, the weather was good. Yeah.
Mosquitoes the size of birds. I'm a Midwesterner too, so I can feel your pain. Not anymore, but I used to.
They're going away. So we're starting to get into the nice crisp fall, which is an awesome time to be in the Midwest for sure. Yeah.
It's also, me and Justin have a little bit of a internal rivalry, right? It's football season right now. I'm a big University of Michigan fan. Go Blue.
Yeah, it's like one of your only low qualities, you know?
Justin's a graduate of the Ohio State University.
There you go.
Talk to us about that. I'll rewind to the beginning, but I'd love to hear your experiences there and how was that a part of the beginning of your journey getting into the military and deciding to become an officer? Give us a picture there.
Yeah, I originally enlisted in the Army back in 1998.
Okay.
So I was a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg.
I did not know this.
Yeah. And the Army has a program called Green to Gold. So they'll take folks that have some promise. I don't know why they picked me, but they'll take some folks and send you off to get your undergrad degree and then get your commission through ROTC.
Okay.
So I chose the best school, not just in the Midwest, but in the country.
Yeah, in the world.
I had originally graduated high school from Ohio, so I decided to move back there. Always enjoyed the school, always enjoyed, being a Buckeye fan. And so, I decided to go to Ohio State and earn my degree. I actually left Fort Bragg to participate in the Green to Gold program 3 weeks before September 11th. September 11th is coming up, and it was a very formative time in my life. I had originally thought, that I was gonna go to school for 4 years, get a degree, do my service as an officer for 4 years, and then leave the service and get out and go to law school or do something else. But the 9/11, I think for a lot of us, fundamentally changed not just our careers, but our lives. I mean, it impacted every September 11th. I think back to how much that day impacted our lives. So yeah.
I have a very vivid memory of being in a gymnasium of my little school of a couple hundred kids, then wheeling the TV out.
Yeah.
And then later that night, laying in bed thinking, are they gonna crash a plane into my house?
Yeah.
It was, that's my, whatever I was, 7 years old, 6 years old. Wild. Yeah. I feel like that event has touched just about every service member of the last, 30, 40 years.
Yeah. I remember everything about that day. Woke up. I distinctly remember waking up, still had no idea that there, we were about to be attacked. And I had just left, like I said, I just left Fort Bragg. I was still moving, and it was, young, had virtually no money. I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. Yeah. I'm not even sure if I had furniture. I definitely didn't have a TV. And I got up and threw on a radio because radios were still the primary.
You're so old.
I know, right? Yeah. But and heard. I actually remember I turned on the radio and it was Howard Stern, and Howard Stern started talking about how there was a plane that hit the World Trade Center, and I thought, wow, that's interesting, right? And so I actually went out for a run, and about maybe a couple miles into the run, there was just something in me saying, man, you need to go back and check and see what's going on. Right. I mean, a plane hitting the World Trade Center, that seems kind of odd. And so when I came back, turned on the radio, and like everything had changed. Howard Stern's there talking about 2 planes that hit and clearly were under attack. And I actually didn't even see the footage for 2 days because I didn't have a TV. And the first time I saw the footage was actually in a laundromat across the street from my apartment. I was over there washing clothes, and that was the first time I actually saw it.
Wow. Yeah. Bridging that gap, right? Because we work with a lot of firefighters. I think that was a moment where the entire world really, the level of respect for our first responder community kicked up about 10,000%. The level of respect for the troops in this country and everything else that followed it. An awful time, but what an amazing time to be a young kid, to see an entire country circle up around our service people, around public safety, and we're still dealing with the aftermath now. But let's come back to that. What the Hero's Journey podcast is all the things that led up to that point of going on that journey. In this case for you, that'd be, joining the Army and serving your country. But before that, like, what was it like for you growing up? Did you have mentors in the family that led you into, wanting to be a leader in the military? Give us a little bit of background, kind of starting childhood up to that point and getting to Ohio State.
Yeah, I come from a pretty normal military family, right? Meaning like it's military service seems to be, it really is kind of a family business. I'm not sure what the percentage is, but there's a large percentage of folks that are military that come from military families.
Right.
So I grew up in a military family. I actually grew up primarily in an Air Force family, just up here in Northern California in Travis Air Force Base. I was born and raised up there.
Didn't make that mistake.
Yeah. I was actually, when it came time for me it wasn't like a foregone conclusion that I was going to join the military, but because it was, my dad was in the military, my grandpa was in the military, my stepdad was in the military. It was a part of what I experienced and what I was. I mean, even a part, as a young kid, it was part of my identity, being a military, being in a military family. And so when it came time for me to, graduate high school, it was pretty clear. I knew what I wanted to do, and that was to go serve. I had originally thought that I was going to go in, just like when I went to Ohio State, thought I was just going to be an officer for 4 years. I originally thought, I'll go for 4 years. I'll go in the Army. I decided on the Army. There was a bit more. I don't know. I just had this call to adventure in me, and I knew that the Army was going to provide something that maybe some of the other services wouldn't.
Right.
But yeah, I grew up in a military family, and that was really the beginning of that call to service and serving something that was greater than myself.
Right.
Yeah.
What was your goal? Like, if going in, I mean, was there like a particular job? Was there a field within the Army that you really wanted to get into, kind of going into it, or is it just kind of show up and see what happens?
Yeah, I knew that I wanted to do the hardest job, and so I decided to become an infantryman, and I went a step further and said I wanted to jump out of airplanes, so I became a paratrooper, and so I did my initial training at Fort Benning, right there on Sand Hill, and then went over to airborne school, and then within a few months I was a paratrooper in the 82nd, carrying more weight than I weighed at the time. I think I was about $140. And yeah, my first job in the infantry was as a assistant machine gunner, which sounds cool, but what it actually is you just end up carrying you carry the ammo and you carry the tripod. And anybody that knows about the ammo and the tripod for a 240 knows, like, that's some serious weight. And so, yeah. And going a step further, I decided that I was going to strap it on my body and jump out of a plane with it. So the 3 years that I served enlisted were really formative for me.
Yeah.
Back then we weren't at war. And so those that were serving didn't know what we were about to get into.
Right.
At some level, there was a lot of innocence there. I mean, I think back to the training that we did when I was, before 9/11, and the training that I did as an officer after 9/11, fundamentally different. But yeah, it's interesting to think back on that time, and there was a little bit of innocence to us. I mean, it was a hard job, and I learned a lot, but had no idea what we were getting ready to get into.
Right. I think that's something that's really misunderstood, how difficult it is to keep a group of people ready to do their job when you're not actually out doing it. Imagine being a firefighter who never got to go on a call, right? Or a cop who's never making an arrest. To take a group of young, anxious, a lot of times delinquent young men and women and trying to get them to perform these tasks in a training environment, year over year when there's not a large conflict going on is very difficult. I don't think what most people realize is that the United States is the best at what we do because we've been in the most war for the past, 30 years, right? Yeah. You got to do it. It takes practice. There's a certain level of seriousness that comes with actually doing the job. What were some of the lessons you learned within those 3 years? Something that you were able to take with you when you were a leader of men, when you're an officer? Because I think it's really important, right? Some of my favorite officers I ever served under were prior enlisted because they had their feet rooted in, what it was like to do that job.
The biggest lesson that I learned in those 3 years that helped me become what I was as an officer and a leader was trusting the NCOs, right? Like and the non-commissioned officers.
Right.
I think that there are a number of things that separate the U.S. military from a lot of the other militaries in the world. Mm-hmm. But the biggest one is our NCOs. The fact that our NCOs are trusted to make decisions, maybe without the direct guidance of an officer, and making life or death decisions, right?
Sure.
And they're trusted to do it. And the NCOs that are trusted to do it and the officers that really understand what they're capable of and giving them that trust, those units go a long way. And those units are capable of like some really powerful things. I've seen the flip side where, and I'm sure you've experienced it, where maybe there wasn't as much trust from the officers. And those units tended to do worse. They weren't making decisions fast enough to get ahead of the operation, to get ahead of the enemy, what the enemy's doing. And it's because you got a bunch of people waiting on an officer to tell them what to do.
The ultimate, differentiator in a high-stress environment. I've talked to a lot of our customers, specifically firefighters, about that. The difference of running a scene when you have a bunch of highly trusted firefighters, which are kind of like the NCOs of the fire community, being able to make, thinking shooter decisions. What's the next step look like? So you do your 3 years, you walked us through going to Ohio State. Like what's after that?
Yeah, so I earned my commission in 2005. Was commissioned as an infantry officer, so I went right back to the infantry. Went back to Fort Benning, good old Fort Benning, for the infantry officer basic course. I did Ranger school there, and then eventually moved to Texas, to Fort Hood, and I was a platoon leader at Fort Hood with the 4th Infantry Division, and I got there as that unit was preparing to go to Baghdad. So we went to Baghdad during.
What year is that?
I was there during the surge, so I would have been there 2007 through 2009. My first deployment was actually a 15-month deployment. It was an interesting time. A lot of people forget about the 15-month deployments. It was a decision that was made to get the troop numbers up for the surge.
Right.
And so I was one of the lucky ones that got a 15-month deployment.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is that like? I mean, my longest deployment was, it was supposed to be 6, but we ended up being there like 7.5, or whatever. What's that like? What's being in that high stress of an environment for that long period of time? Like, what did you witness with yourself, but also with the people?
Yeah. You really have to go into those situations, those lengthy deployments, with the the mindset of this is a marathon, and the marathon being you're not sprinting 26.2 miles. You know, you're going at a good clip, but you've got to make sure that you're pacing yourself well enough where you can go at those sprints when you need to, when the environment needs you to go in those sprints.
Right.
Paying attention to the pace of your people was probably the most important thing for me. Keeping my thumb on the pulse of the platoon. I was a platoon leader at the time. Keeping my thumb on through the NCOs, like really like making sure that they're engaging with the guys and paying attention to the little things, right? If someone's behavior is changing, really making sure that we're getting them the help they need.
Right.
Because 15 months anywhere away from your family is tough.
Yeah.
But 15 months in combat, right, during a surge can be almost it'll break people if they don't have the right leadership and the right support to help them.
Can you paint a picture of what the environment looked like at that time? 2007, 2008. What's a bad day? I guess that's a more interesting.
Yeah.
What's a bad day during that time?
A bad day, obviously, if you get someone injured or someone's killed, the normal pace of it was really about pacing ourselves.
Right.
Baghdad at the time when we first got there, there was late 2007. Pretty kinetic, right? You had just kind of coming out of the Sunni uprising in the East Baghdad. You had Jaish al-Mahdi and Sadr City really kind of blowing up. I was there during the construction of a wall on a route they called Route Gold. Really, the intent there was to contain Jaish al-Mahdi and Sadr City, but it was really, it was a formative time for me on how to lead people in combat, how to lead them in sustained combat, how to get the most out of your people in a really stressful environment, and making sure they're being taken care of. But yeah, the environment itself, very kinetic. Yeah, Baghdad at the time was very kinetic. I will say my time there the one nice thing about being somewhere for 15 months is you actually get to see the progress, right?
Right.
And I distinctly remember when we got there, significant acts in the city were pretty high. When we left right at there was a pretty big election in January of 2009, a national level Iraqi election. And we were expecting to have a pretty significant uptick in attacks on the day of the election. But between the work that everybody had been doing, not just in Baghdad, but throughout the country.
Is that attacks you're saying on U.S. troops, on your base, on like where?
Yeah, all of it, right? Okay. So attacks on U.S. troops, Sunni on Shia, Shia on Sunni attacks. All these things were happening at that time. But the day of the election, I don't think we had a single SIG act throughout Baghdad, a significant act throughout Baghdad, which was pretty cool because it showed the progress that had been made in that 14 or 15 months.
Sure, you're starting to suppress the enemy.
Yeah,
they knew it was going to be a day two. Is there a particular event during your time there that you feel really tested your leadership? Was there like something that you can remember where it's all the elements of being in a high stress environment? It's dealing with the individual emotions of your people. It's dealing with your own emotions. It's having to make hard decisions. Like, is there something that you think back on a lot that you carry with you?
My time in Iraq, not one specific incident. There were a number of incidences that tested my ability to lead people in combat, but I can't point to one specific incident. Right. It was literally just kind of talking what we just talked about before of for 15 months you got to make sure you're taking care of your people. And I think that was probably the biggest lesson that I learned. The biggest lesson I learned from my time as a platoon leader in combat wasn't really anything about combat. It was about taking care of your people. Right. It was about making sure you're paying attention to behaviors, paying attention to the things they're saying, paying attention to who's isolating themselves. Because again, combat's going to bring out the best in people, but it's going to bring out the worst in people, and you got to be prepared as a leader to support the people that are struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's after that? You go through that 2007 to 2009 Iraqi campaign. Was that
Operation Iraqi Freedom. I can't
Iraqi
remember
Freedom.
the number. It was OIF
There's so
7
many.
through 9, something like
Yeah.
that.
There's so many. What's it like coming home, and then what's after? You come back home, deal with the kind of the realization of being back in the. What are some of those struggles like, and then what's right after that?
Yeah, for me coming home, I think that was my first glimpse into, and hindsight, is 2020. So you always look back on things that you did that you should have done differently. But I would say that transition home and then deciding to go to Special Forces Assessment Selection pretty quickly after my return was the moment for me where I really put my cards into my career. I really put my cards into I'm going to do this for the long haul, and I don't want to just I want to, if I'm going to do this, I want to be with the best. But looking back, it was me really pouring everything I had into me and my career, and frankly, probably ignoring some things that I should have been paying attention to.
What do you like? Yeah. Like what? What were you ignoring?
I was married at the time, right? Didn't discuss with my wife. Like, we obviously discussed my desire to go to Special Forces, but I never asked like, "Hey, is this something that you want me to do?" Yeah. This was I come home in February, and in April I'm 2 months later I'm in Fort Bragg, going through selection. But yeah, it was a moment for me where I knew this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And this is what I want to be. If you decide to go down the route that you went, right, like you got to pour your all into it.
Right.
You don't just show up to buds and expect to pass. Like you pour everything into preparing for it. And it's the same on the Army side. You pour everything into preparing to go to SFAS, and then you're selected, which frankly, when I got selected, I went to SFAS. Like I said, I came home 2 months later, 50-month deployment, 2 months later, I'm in selection. I frankly went to SFAS not expecting to pass. I was like, there's no way I'm going to pass this thing, right? Like, but I went, and I was probably just as surprised as anybody else when I was picked up. To prepare yourself for that, I mean, you've really got to pour yourself into that,
right.
And you got to frankly ignore a lot of things.
Training like that will, if there's a weak bone in your body, if there's a weak thought, it will be brought to the surface. I always remembered hearing the guys. I always knew right when someone's going to quit, because they start talking about, oh, my dad has this company that I can work at, or like, oh, there's this other job that I was actually really interested in. And you start to hear those little things coming out. And then, of course, 1 or 2 days later, that person would be gone. You kind of have to pretend like there is no other option, right?
It's burning the ships, right? It's you got to burn the ships. And especially as an officer in the Army, when you decide to go to SFAS, you're taking a pretty big risk, because if you get selected and then you go to the qualification course, you spend 6-8 months in the qualification course, and you end up not passing the qualification course, and you go back to the regular Army, you're now probably about a year behind your peers. And so it really is a burn the ships kind of mentality. And so going into that, there's a lot of pressure there.
You end up being the officer in charge of the mess hall, or the latrine duty if you don't do it.
Yeah, and there were guys that I went to the Q course with that spent about a year in the qualification course, and for one reason or another didn't get moved on to the next phase of the qualification course, and they just chose to get out because they were just so far behind their peers that it was really detrimental to their military careers.
Can you quickly describe what the say it again, the
SFAS
course, like, what does it entail?
Yeah. So when you decide to, you've got to apply to be a Green Beret. Yeah. So I can speak through the officer lens. You can't just join the Army as an officer and become a Green Beret. You have to spend at least about 3 years. It changes, with time, but about 3 years in the conventional Army as a platoon leader, learning how to lead, learning the ins and outs of the Army. And then you got to apply to go to Special Forces Assessment Selection. If you're selected to go, you spend about 3 weeks at a place called Camp McCall near Fort Bragg, North Carolina. You're talking about like the armpit of the world. I mean, this is one of those, you know, there's not much out there except for bugs and swamps.
Good.
And it's a good way to isolate people and really Special Forces Assessment Selection is the first time, I mean, in the Army, you're told what to do, right? I mean, that's part of the Army. You're told what to do. You're told where to be, what to wear, what to pack in your ruck. Special Forces Assessment Selection is the complete opposite. You got a whiteboard. The instructions are on the whiteboard. It's on you to get prepared for the next event, no matter if they give you a few hours or a few minutes to prepare.
Yeah.
But Special Forces Assessment Selection, without going into a ton of detail, is really just about, you have to be physically prepared to go, but you also don't have to be Superman. I mean, I got selected, right?
Don't be so hard on yourself.
It really is about, they're going to break you down physically because the real selection happens once you're broken physically. Yeah. And now what do you do? Now what decisions are you making? Do you have the will to keep moving on? You can keep moving, right? Everybody's got this mental breaking point. The reality is you got way more in the tank past that mental breaking point. Do you push past it and do you dig into those reserves? And so Special Force Assessment Selection, there's a lot of individual events. There's a lot of team events to see how well you operate on a team, how well you lead a team. They give you tasks that are virtually impossible to do, but they want to see you attempt to do it anyway.
Right.
It's a fun course if you are interested in seeing how far you can push yourself.
So graduation, you make it through all of that. What's that moment like for you? Is that like a defining moment of your entire life? You got the military family. I look back on graduating buds. There's this one picture from the back where the guy's putting my trident on, and it's a smile that I'll never be able to repeat, right? Yeah. It's just it's a different type of happiness. Like, what was that like for you? Moment?
You do SFAS, and then that you get selected to go to the qualification course. Right. Qualification course is about a year long, but the graduation from that pretty surreal, you know, because I'm sure that was the same with you in the Navy. Like when you're in the Army and you're a soldier in the Army. I mean, you really look up to Green Berets, right? Like these are the guys that this is the tip of the spear. I mean, these are the guys that are the absolute best of the best. Every time I interacted with a Green Beret when I was in the conventional Army, I was just blown away with the level of professionalism, the way they approach problem solving, the way they approach their job. I mean, guys that were just so locked into their job and what they were doing.
Right.
And you want to be one, but you're inside that internal voice is, are you good enough?
Yeah.
You know? And so when you do get that trident or you do get that Green Beret, it's this surreal feeling of, I think I'm good enough. And then you get to your first team and you realize you're not quite good enough yet.
Yeah. Sit down and shut up.
Yeah.
Take us through a quick timeline of, so you've made it to this point of your career, right? You earned the Green Beret. Like, I'm guessing there's at least another 10 years after that of service, or 12 years. You've already done you're 4, another 2 years of school, and then.
So let's see. I earned my Green Beret in early 2011. Got sent to 3rd Special Forces Group, actually right there at Fort Bragg, so I didn't even have to PCS. Signed into my first unit, which was 1st Battalion, 3rd Special Forces Group. Met my team. I remember the first time meeting my team was for PT, physical training. My platoon my team sergeant at the time, Mike, said, "Hey, we do physical training at 5 a.m." And I thought, okay, 5 a.m., let's go.
Hey,
so I met my team at 5 a.m. We went to the gym, and that was my first moment where I was like, all right, you're not good enough yet, you know. But that was fun, right? Like the thing that I loved about being SF was you go to work every day struggling to be mediocre, you know, because you got so many guys that are just better than you. But that's fun. Like that's exciting because now you got targets, right? But yeah, I met my team. was blessed with a phenomenal team of men that I still am close with today. Yeah, it just, when I look back, every time I talk about that team, I always talk back to like how fortunate I was to fall on that team. I mean, I had guys that just absolute rock stars.
Yeah.
And frankly, like I look at the rest of my SF career, and it all started there, and it wasn't me, right? Like they made me successful.
Yeah.
I guess going back to listening to your NCOs was one of the first lessons I learned as an enlisted guy.
Bottom up.
I learned, like, if I trust these guys, if I show them that I can give them the trust that they need to operate, they're going to make decisions on my behalf. I'm going to have their backs when those decisions go wrong. And if they know that I have their back, they're not going to be afraid to make those decisions. But if we can get to a point where they've got the trust that I'm going to have their back, they're going to make some decisions that are make us all really successful. And those decisions made me look, frankly, pretty good. I had a really successful detachment command time, and it was very little to do with me, and it had everything to do with the guys that was on my team.
I want to ask you questions about leadership. I want to ask you questions about purpose, and how you're able to carry that from there, because you're building a platoon right now, right? You are finding the talent that's running this company, and you've obviously obtained the skills to do that through your time in service, probably, your time as a father and everything else in your life. But give us like the bullet points of the different jobs that you held throughout the time in the Army, and if there's something that you specifically took away from. So I don't think most people understand that not every officer, you're in charge of a platoon and that's what you do your entire career. Right. They don't get that you go work at the Pentagon or wherever else in DC or so just take us through a timeline of the jobs that you held. Yeah,
ODA command was definitely the mountaintop, right? Any SF officer will tell you that was the best time.
Tell us what ODA.
Yeah, so ODA, Operational Detachment Alpha. When you're a brand new Green Beret, that's the first unit. That's the first unit you're going to go to as a 12-person operational attachment. I left my operational attachment, did one deployment with them, pretty kinetic deployment to Afghanistan. We lost my second in command during that trip. Came home, took command of a company, a support company in that same battalion. So I spent about 4.5 years or so with 1st Battalion, 3rd Group as a captain. Was fortunate enough to get picked up to a program that sent me off to grad school. So I did 2 years of grad school. Nice. And then I came back to 3rd Group as a company commander. So as a company commander, I was responsible for 6 ODAs, 6 Operational Attachment Alphas, about 100 guys. And then did that for a year, and then moved into a battalion and then group operations roles. So I was the operations officer for a battalion, about 500 people, responsible for all the operations and training. And then I got moved up to the group operations officer. I was responsible for all operations and training within that group, and then all deployments to primarily we had ODAs in Africa and some in CENTCOM. So I was responsible for that, and then finished my operational time with 3rd Group as an operations officer for a new task force we were standing up in East Africa. So I was deployed to Somalia for about 6 months. Actually left for Somalia right at the beginning of COVID. So this was another, kind of hindsight being what it is. Right. You think back on some of the decisions you made, and you put the job ahead of a lot of things, including your family. And so for me, literally days into the world shutting down, we hop on a plane. I had a son that was 4 at the time. My daughter was 1. Had no idea what was happening in the world. We didn't know if this was the end of it, right? And I said, hey, sorry, I got to go save Somalia, you know? And so I left my wife and kids for 6 months to go to Somalia. Came home and really saw the impact of that decision,
come back to a new world a little bit.
New world, left my wife with two young kids, no support network at all. I mean, this was in the days when nobody was talking to anybody. You weren't meeting up at parks. Parks were closed. Right. And so here's my wife with 2 young kids at home, has no idea what I'm doing in Somalia, right? The military, like one of the things that is lost, I think, and is not talked about enough is the military spouses. Like, man, when we deploy, we're doing exactly what we want to do. I mean, we live for those deployments, right? You live for doing the job that you train to do. And you leave, you know exactly what's happening every day. You know when you're out on op, you know when you're back home. Your wife has no clue. Your kids have no clue. So they spend 6, 8, 12, 15 months every time the phone rings, and anytime there's a knock at the door, there's that drop, that sinking feeling in the stomach. And, it's translating it to what we're doing at Sharp, right? I mean, the first responders, the spouses face the same exact thing.
Yeah.
If
not worse.
They kiss their loved ones off in the morning or the night if they're a night shift. For that 8, 10, 12 hours that their spouse is gone, they have no clue what's happening. They have no clue what's, and every time the phone rings, every time the door, there's a knock at the door, there's that sinking feeling, that really that pressure is insane.
There's so much we could talk about there, and same thing. When I left on my first deployment, my wife was 3 months pregnant, something like that. So wasn't there the whole time, never heard a single complaint about anything.
Yeah.
Never. Because, the wives of military people, of first responders, they don't want to affect your performance. So they learn to compartmentalize the same way you do. I remember getting on the phone and being like, hey, you're going to see that somebody died. I'm sorry, I can't talk. Goodbye.
Yep.
And it's like her next call was a week later.
Yeah.
And that was just like what an awful thing to do to a person. And that's a big reasons why we support spouses, right, at Sharp Performance, because it's a very unique environment for any person to be in. And there's also this element of you get so good at compartmentalizing it that you get desensitized to it. Yeah. Now there is no deep empathy for what that person's going through. They come home and they're like, are you ready to be dad? Are you ready to be mom? Like, I need you to come back here as quickly as humanly possible. And what a difficult thing to do, making that transition. And that's something that a lot of our members work with coaches on, is how to make that transition from work to home. And then you had an experience that you talked about. You lost somebody in Afghanistan, and then all of a sudden you're back home and you're going to grad school. Like, that's a huge shift. Did that have a pretty big impact on you? Did you have like a support network or things that you did to kind of get through that?
No. Well, yeah, I had a support network, but just like all of us, right? Didn't use it. Yeah. Right. Was too proud. Kind of thought, oh, I'm a Green Beret, right? I can put this thing in the back of my mind. I can lock it up. I can throw the key away, and I keep moving. And you can do that for a little bit. I would say my experience in grad school was probably my first experience where I recognized, I had a pretty significant TBI incident in 2014, and that was, grad school was the first moment for me where I had this manifestation of, okay, the service, the things that I'm doing is impacting my physical health and my mental health. Right. But just like the rest of us, right, I locked it away. I mean, in grad school, I distinctly remember, my wife calls it my two-year deployment, because I would spend 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, either in class or reading, rereading, because I forgot the things that I had read the night before, or I would read a page and then get to the bottom of the page and realize I have no idea what I just read. But just like the rest of us, just like, the clients at Sharp, right? We try to lock that away and throw it out and write it off. Things start to come out after a bit. For me, my experience at grad school was probably the first. I knew something was wrong, but I was too afraid. I was too proud to admit it or ask for help. And then kind of fast forwarding, right? I kept living that life, and frankly, the lie for a long time, until my last assignment after coming home from Somalia. I was assigned to policy in the Pentagon, working on the Secretary of Defense side, working for the Undersecretary of Defense for policy. I was working a counterterrorism portfolio. That shift for me was really the moment where I recognized I had a fork in the road, right? I was nearing 20 years, so I was eligible for retirement. And I could, one route I could do what I wanted to do, which was go back to Fort Bragg and command a battalion, right? And be back with the guys.
Right.
That's like every bone in my body was like, that's what you need to do. But the reality is the other route was getting out, was retiring. But at the fork of that road was my family,
right.
And fortunately I was at least smart enough to recognize that my military career was good for me because it fed a sense of purpose and just living the warrior's life, right? I mean, we're just like the firefighters that march towards the buildings on 9/11, right? There's this difference in the warrior's mind of living that kind of life. But the other side of that coin is that there is probably a family that this life is not working for. And for me, coming home from Somalia, recognizing the impact of me being gone, especially during that time period, was how hard that was on my family. Moving my family to DC weeks after I get home from Somalia, my son, before we moved to Indianapolis where we live now, he hadn't spent more than 1 year in the same school, and so just you see the impacts of your service on your family, and for me, it was a very clear point where I knew that I had to retire. It was probably one of the hardest decisions I made, but also one of the easiest because it was clear the decision had to be made.
Right.
It was time for me to retire and get out.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a sense of pride that the family gets too. Sure. It's not their choice completely, but just like the people who we serve at Sharp, there's a real sense of pride. They're in it too, right? They're also gone on deployments. You're gone, but they're here. But it's a special thing.
Yeah.
No matter the way you look at it and how hard it is, it is a really special thing. Which leads to the transition, which I think very, very underestimated in each one of these environments. Right? Specifically for fire and law enforcement. I heard a crazy statistic that said after you do your retirement in fire and law enforcement, there's like a 7 to 9 year lifespan after retirement of the average person who retires from those professions. Don't quote me on that exactly, but it's something very close to that. Talk about harnessing and compartmentalizing huge amounts of mental, physical, spiritual stress, and then having nowhere to put it.
Yeah.
A job that totally defines you top to bottom and your family, then just kind of getting shoved into the world. What was your transition like? And, what are you doing for yourself now to kind of continue to alleviate? It's a long road.
Yeah, it is. It's been 3 years. I retired out of the Pentagon a little bit over 3 years ago. When we moved to Indianapolis. I tell people all the time, and I have a lot of calls with guys that are getting out that seek me out and seek my advice out. And I tell them that the transition it starts when you decide it's time to leave. And I tell them, I don't know how long it lasts because I'm still doing it, right? Like 3 years later, if you told me 3 years ago that I would still be in the mentality that I'm transitioning, I'd have thought you were crazy, right? And we have access to so many different programs. Like there's a ton of nonprofits that are out there that help, veterans or help service members transition to civilian life. And they're great programs, but nothing prepares you. I tell people that transition, all the things I did in the military, transition is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Same.
Yeah, hardest thing I've ever done because when you're in the military, and I think particularly in special operations, just because of the close-knit nature of the community, your service, you're filled with this deep sense of purpose, right?
Right.
And then one day it's gone. Like it's gone. And for the first few months, it actually feels kind of good. Like you lift that, you take that uniform off, you lift, there's not, you don't have the responsibility that you had when you were in the service. You don't have people telling you what to do. You're not tied to this organization that can move you and your family on a little notice to who knows where. But after a few months, things start to settle in, and there's something missing, and it's purpose, right? I'm convinced that a lot of the veterans that struggle, a lot of the veterans, frankly, that go down the path of taking their own lives. Don't get me wrong, like there are plenty of things that we experience in our service that can lead to a decision like that. But I believe that the number one cause is lack of purpose,
right? Loss
of purpose, loss of tribe. And, when I first left the Pentagon, I still didn't know professionally what I wanted to do. I knew that I originally thought we thought we were going to move to DC, and I was going to, retire, and we were going to stay in DC and do the very traditional, retired 05
Become
thing
a
of
congressman.
Or work for some of the agencies out there. But for various reasons, I decided that DC wasn't right for me and my family. And we wanted to move back to the Midwest and be closer to some family. But then I had no idea what I wanted to do. And frankly, I didn't put enough thought into that. We moved out there to the north side of Indy. My wife and I, my wife used to fight as an amateur, boxing, kickboxing, MMA. So we, I don't ever argue with my wife. It'll be a one-way
catch
argument.
A heel to the face.
It'll be a one-way argument. Yeah. But we decided we opened up a women-only kickboxing gym. We really awesome. Enjoy. But even that, after about a year of that, that lack of purpose really started to creep in. I felt stuck. And so, I made the decision to go back to working with one of the nonprofits that I was working with to help me refine that sense of purpose.
What are they called?
Yeah, I was working with the Commit Foundation.
Cool.
Phenomenal organization. Worked with a coach, Michelle Olive. She runs the alumni program for Commit. And after a number of calls with her, she said, you really need to look at startups. Everything you're looking for, small team, moving fast, solving big problems, creating something new. She's like, there's just one place to find it. That's
you need to feed
startup.
The beast, dude. You got to feed the beast.
Yeah. So she connected me with a bunch of folks, and it's actually a funny story how I found Sharp. I was introduced through probably 3 or 4 degrees of separation. I was introduced to one of the investors for Sharp. And he said, hey, I think you should take this call with this company called Sharp Performance. They're doing coaching for high demand professions. They're starting with first responders. I had experienced the human performance programs, the SOCOM human performance program, while I was in the service. So I knew what Sharp was building. I had a really good sense of the power of coaching. And so, the investor said, I'm going to connect you. So about 5 minutes later, Andrew Sackmar, the co-founder, texts me, and Andrew and I used to serve together at third group. And so he texts me, and I hadn't put 2 and 2 together, right? And so I didn't realize that these were connected. And so I said, hey man, what are you up to? How you been? He's like, no, dude, I'm from Sharp Performance. I'm the guy that we were connected with. I was like, holy cow. And it's funny because I was actually in the process of, I was close to accepting another offer from another company. And he called and he said, hey, I want to pitch an idea to you. We need to grow the team. Like we're hitting a point where we know we've got something here. We're impacting a lot of lives. We have a lot of opportunity for growth. Mm-hmm. But in order to grow, we're going to have to grow a team. And the idea of growing a team around a mission like this was just way too good for me to pass up. Hopped on a quick call with Ben. I don't even remember it being like a formal offer, right? I just said, I'm in. Like whatever you guys are doing, I don't care how much you're going to pay me. Like I'm in.
I love that.
Hopped on a call with you, hopped on a call with a bunch of the other Sharp teammates at the time, and just knew like, okay, that purpose that I'm looking for, that tribe I'm looking for, it's at Sharp. Right. And now we get to, it's no longer fighting, right? We're fighting a new battle.
Yeah.
And that is making sure that right now, making sure the first responders in this country, every first responder has access to a coach, a Sharp coach, and eventually taking this thing and giving as many people as possible the opportunity to experience what Sharp provides, because it's really, really powerful and it's life-changing.
That purpose is everything. I mean, it's most guys get out and they become, it's like you become a junkie for anything that's going to keep me moving, right? Yeah. So I want to start this little business, and I'm going to start a t-shirt company, and I'm also going to volunteer a non-for-profit. I'm going to do, and I'm going to do, and I'm going to do, right? It's very hard to internalize and say, well, what am I doing for myself physically and mentally? You know, the job is a portion of it, right? I remember when I left Salesforce, same thing, right? I left the SEAL teams. I was working at Salesforce, learning a lot, but just did not have that same sense of purpose that I had in the military. And I got a call from a buddy of mine who was also working at the Pentagon. He said, hey, our buddy Chris Chambers just died on an op. Not confirmed dead at that time. He fell off a boat during a BBSS mission, but he was assuming that he was probably dead. And it hit me like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And I called Ben and Andrew. I was kind of working for them. We were just, it was still in progress, right? We were talking to police departments, fire departments. And I said, you guys got to figure out what you can pay me. I was like, cause I'm quitting today. I was like, I need to do something where I feel like I'm contributing to someone or something, right? I can't have phone calls where I hear about my friends dying in ops and I'm sitting on my laptop for 15 hours selling, CRM software, which is a great product and for a million great reasons, but I needed more.
Yeah.
So I really resonate with your story a lot.
Yeah. So many guys, when they get out, I talk to a lot of guys now. I mean, as the head of talent, my job is to bring talent to Sharp, right? So I talk to a lot of guys, especially guys leaving the military. And, for a lot of them, Sharp isn't the right fit. We don't have a spot yet.
Right.
But I always take those calls because I want to warn them. There's a number of lessons that I've learned about transition, but one of the most valuable lessons I've learned is purpose over money. Like purpose over money. Because I talk to guys all the time that get out and they decide, I'm going to go make as much. Like their goal is to make as much money as possible. And there's nothing wrong with making money. Right. But if that's your only goal, almost guaranteed you're going to be miserable. You're going to be miserable within a year, because you're going to have that. You have such a deep sense of purpose in the service. You don't realize that's what it is.
Right.
Like you really don't, because it's just a part of the culture. It's a part of what we did. Right. It's a part of who we were, and you don't realize you had it until it's gone. And I tell them, if you don't feel that sense of purpose, I don't care how much money you're making, you're going to go down a path that could lead you to doing something pretty harmful. Yeah.
I just had this conversation with it was actually a fire chief and a police chief. I asked them, I said, I really think that this huge push for overtime because of, the lack of folks doing the job right now is kind of like the biggest detriment to the first responder community, that you're doing it too much. It becomes about money. People are taking huge amounts of overtime because they want to make $300,000-$400,000 a year as a cop or firefighter, and you're almost losing that sense of purpose and love for the job because it's becoming something that it wasn't. Yeah. Right. A person is not meant to be in that environment for that many hours over that many days and then go on deployments and then there's always something more. Being able to take a break and remember why you love something, and keep it simple. Yeah. There's something really beautiful about that. And I think when people work with our coaches, that's something that they see. Yeah. It's like you got to take a little bit of time for you if you want to be able to give it to everybody else who you're serving. Because at the end of the day, there's going to be nothing left. Yep. Right? There's going to be nothing left to give. Yeah. And, our coaches do such a really phenomenal job of tying so many things, but like one of them is helping our members understand what that sense of purpose looks like in their lives. Right. Taking the pause, taking the time to reflect, but then also, being part of your purpose and part of taking that pause is sharing your experience with others, right? Like I've found that to be probably of all the coaching or therapeutic things that I've done, actually just mentoring other people, right? Coaching
has probably been the most powerful thing for me. The hero's journey, I mean, it talks about like, going out on this call for an adventure, which is what I've done and continue to do. That's the other thing about the hero's journey is like, it's not just one, right? Like we're always
keep going.
Yeah. And that's part of the purpose, right? Is finding what that next journey is, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be picking up a gun. For me, it's building this team. It's building sharp performance to impact as many lives as possible. It's not about revenue. It's about impacting as many lives as we possibly can. Right. And sharing that experience with others, and then going out and finding the new adventure and continuing to share that adventure. Right. And to share the lessons learned has been, of all the things that I've done in my transition, that's been the most powerful.
So let's wrap it on that. I mean, if you could share something with whoever's going to be watching this, you've had all of these experiences, all these adventures, and now you're kind of returning back to another community of service. If there's something you can share with these people about anything, I mean, is there something that comes to mind?
Take care of yourselves and take care of your families, right? Like the community we came from and the people we're serving now at Sharp, these are people in jobs that you're constantly giving to others, right? You're constantly putting the mission and the people you serve with and the people that you serve above yourself, right? Like you think, our law enforcement or fire clients, their whole job is about taking from their cup and pouring it into everybody else's cup because that's their job. They're responding to people on their worst day. Culturally, there's this idea that because you're a firefighter, because you're a law enforcement officer, because you're a special operator, you have the ability to compartmentalize, and you don't need to take care of yourself. You need to just keep pushing and taking care of your job and the people that you're serving. But nobody's going to take care of you and your family better than you. And if you're ignoring that, there's going to come a point where there's going to be a breaking point.
Right.
And it's going to happen to everybody. And if you're not tending to yourself and you're not tending to your family, and you're not paying attention to how your service is impacting your family, there's going to be some negative consequences. So pay attention to that. And it's okay to take a knee. Like you have to take a knee, especially as a leader. Your people have to see you take that knee, and take a pause and take care of yourself, because then they're going to do the same thing.
What I just heard is find a coach.
Find a coach.
Find a person who's done this. And I'll wrap it on this. This is something that was given to me. Was my coach when I was leaving the Navy. She had me write down a Post-it note to put on the dash of my truck. And on the Post-it note, it said, when you go into your house, get down on eye level with your son and actually ask him how he's doing. Don't just say, how you doing, bud, and walk away. Like, find out something. Like, ground yourself in that moment a little bit. 2, if you need time, you have to ask for it. Don't just assume that everybody knows where you're at and the things that you're experiencing. You have to learn how to verbalize to the people in your life, like, hey, I need 10 minutes because I'm unwell at this moment. And I can't even explain it to you what that thing is, but don't take it. We get so used to taking time while we're in, and we forget that somebody else has to give it away. It's not just this free-floating thing that you deserve. You have to verbalize what you're going through. And the 3rd was get grounded. Learn how to ground yourself. Look up how to ground. Like, actually, for me, it was like putting my bare feet on the grass outside and just closing my eyes and really grounding my mind, body, and soul into that moment and being like, okay, I'm here. I'm good. I'm home. I need to correct myself, or else I'm going to have nothing to give the people around me. Justin, this has been awesome. Yeah, I got to learn a couple of things about you I didn't know. Thank you for being a part of this company, man. You're a gigantic value add. For anybody else who's listening right now, we actually just did a huge company launch. We came out and showed that we took on some investment partners, raised $12 million, the largest being with Andreessen Horowitz, an incredible venture capitalist. So we're really excited about that. We also released a commercial that I'm sure we'll be able to attach to this podcast. So please click it, share it, repost it, tell everybody you know within the first responder community, the military community, what it is we're doing. If you have somebody that you want us to talk to, we want to talk to them. So thank you very much. And that's it.
Thank you.